The young black receptionist knew she was about to lose her job. She walked toward South Korea's most feared hotel chairman anyway. The luxurious lobby of the YMS Grand Hotel had fallen eerily silent. Guests stopped checking in. Bellhops stood frozen beside polished luggage carts. The concierge lowered his head. Even the fountain in the center of the marble lobby suddenly seemed louder than the people around it. Standing near the reception desk was Yoon Min-seok, 35 years old, chairman of YMS Grand Hotel Group, the most prestigious luxury hotel empire in South Korea. Within Korea's hospitality industry, one sentence was enough to make experienced managers lose sleep. Chairman Yoon is visiting tomorrow. He demanded perfection, accepted no excuses, and believed mistakes deserved consequences. One mistake, that was all it took. One careless decision, and your career could disappear before sunset. A young housekeeper stood a few feet away, tears streaming down her face. It was only her third day on the job. She had mistakenly entered the presidential suite while an important international investor was still inside. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had been broken. The guest hadn't even filed a complaint. But none of that mattered to Yoon Min-seok. Incompetence has no place in my hotels. His voice was calm, cold, final. Collect your final paycheck. The young woman broke down, desperately apologizing. She begged for one more chance. The hotel manager cautiously stepped forward. Chairman, perhaps we could. Min-seok looked at him. The manager immediately fell silent. Nobody else spoke. Nobody moved. Everyone in the lobby knew the rules. When Chairman Yoon made a decision, there was no discussion. Only obedience. Behind the reception desk, Jasmine Bennett watched the frightened housekeeper struggle to breathe through her tears. She looked around the lobby. Managers, supervisors, security guards. Not one person was willing to help. Fear had stolen every voice in the building. Jasmine stepped away from the reception desk. The hotel manager's eyes widened. Jasmine, don't. She kept walking. Every step echoed across the marble floor. Guests turned to watch. Employees stared in disbelief. Security immediately started toward her. She stopped just a few feet from the billionaire chairman. You should be ashamed of yourself. The words cut through the silence. Yoon Min-seok slowly turned his head. Nobody had ever dared speak to him that way in front of his employees. Jasmine refused to look away. You expect excellence. There's nothing wrong with that. But humiliating people doesn't create excellence. It creates fear. She pointed toward the sobbing housekeeper. She made one mistake. You just taught everyone in this hotel to hide theirs. Silence. Absolute silence. Several guests quietly raised their phones. The hotel manager closed his eyes. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The chairman would destroy her career. Yoon Min-seok stared at Jasmine without saying a word. His expression revealed nothing. The silence stretched until it became almost unbearable. Then, he adjusted the sleeve of his tailored suit, turned toward the revolving doors, and walked out of the hotel. No threats, no shouting, no punishment. He simply left. The revolving doors spun slowly behind him. Only after his car disappeared did anyone in the lobby remember how to breathe. Jasmine watched him drive away, convinced she had just ended her career. She had no idea. This was only the beginning. The revolving doors slowed to a stop. Outside, Yoon Min-seok stepped into the waiting black luxury sedan without looking back. The chauffeur quietly closed the rear door. Seconds later, the car pulled away from YMS Grand Hotel, disappearing into the busy streets of Seoul. Only then did the lobby seem to breathe again. The silence shattered into a storm of whispers. Did that really happen? She actually confronted Chairman Yoon. She's finished. I've worked here for 10 years. No one has ever spoken to him like that. The terrified housekeeper who had been dismissed moments earlier remained frozen where she stood, tears still rolling down her cheeks. Two co-workers hurried over to comfort her, but even they couldn't stop staring at Jasmine Bennett. Every eye in the lobby followed her. Jasmine stood motionless, watching the chairman's car disappear beyond the hotel gates. The courage that had carried her through the confrontation slowly faded, replaced by a knot in her stomach. She had spoken from her heart. She didn't regret defending someone who couldn't defend herself. What frightened her wasn't what she had said. It was who she had said it to. Hotel manager Park Sung-ho hurried toward her, his face drained of color. "What were you thinking?" he whispered. "I couldn't stand there and watch. You challenged the chairman in front of guests." "I challenged someone who humiliated an innocent employee." Mr. Park closed his eyes for a moment, struggling to remain calm. "You don't know Chairman Yoon." "I know enough." "No," he replied quietly. "You really don't." His voice carried no anger now. "Only experience. I've watched brilliant managers lose their careers because they underestimated him. He doesn't forget. He doesn't make emotional decisions." And once Chairman Yoon reaches a conclusion, he looked toward the hotel entrance where the chairman's car had disappeared. Almost nothing changes his mind. A chill settled over Jasmine. Not because Mr. Park had raised his voice, but because he hadn't. For the first time since the confrontation, she wondered if she had truly understood the man she had stood against. Jasmine quietly returned behind the reception desk. Her smile returned the moment another guest approached. "Welcome to YMS Grand Hotel." Her voice sounded calm. Inside, her heartbeat refused to settle. Every few minutes, another employee walked past, pretending not to look at her. Some pitied her. Others admired her courage. None believed she would still have a job by tomorrow. Across Seoul, the black sedan rolled through the gates of YMS Group headquarters. The 60-story glass tower overlooked the Han River, standing as one of the most recognizable corporate buildings in the country. Employees entering the lobby immediately stepped aside as the chairman walked through without acknowledging anyone. The atmosphere changed the moment he appeared. Conversations ended. Smiles disappeared. Everyone instinctively straightened their posture. The elevator doors opened before he reached them. Within seconds, he was ascending toward the executive floor. Minutes later, Yoon Min-seok stood alone inside his office. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline. The room was immaculate. Every document rested perfectly aligned. Every chair sat precisely where it belonged. His executive assistant, Lee Hyun, entered carrying a digital tablet. Neither man spoke immediately. Silence was normal inside the chairman's office. Finally, Min-seok broke it. "The receptionist." Lee immediately understood. "Her name is Jasmine Bennett. Employment history: 4 months with YMS Grand Hotel. No previous disciplinary reports. Excellent attendance. Outstanding guest satisfaction scores." Min-seok listened without interrupting. When Lee finished, he waited for the instruction he expected. "Prepare her termination." Instead, the chairman asked, "What do her supervisors say about her?" Lee glanced at another report. "They describe her as dependable, professional, and unusually calm under pressure." Silence returned. Lee carefully cleared his throat. "Should I notify human resources?" "No." The answer surprised him. "Bring me her complete personnel file." "Yes, Chairman." "And schedule a meeting." Lee hesitated. "With Miss Bennett? Today? 2 o'clock. Lee lowered his head. "Understood." As he left the office, confusion followed him into the hallway. He had worked beside Yoon Min-seok for 11 years. Normally, the chairman's decisions were predictable. This one wasn't. As back at the hotel, Jasmine's computer chimed softly. A new internal message appeared on her screen. From Chairman's Executive Office, Miss Jasmine Bennett. "You are required to report to YMS Group headquarters at 2 p.m. Attendance is mandatory." She stared at the message. Her mouth suddenly felt dry. The receptionist beside her noticed the notification. "I'm so sorry." Within minutes, the entire front desk knew. One employee quietly whispered, "No one gets summoned to headquarters unless it's serious." Another simply shook his head. "They're going to fire her personally." Even the young housekeeper Jasmine had defended, approached her with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry." This happened because of me. Jasmine gently squeezed her hand. No. It happened because someone needed to speak. The young woman cried even harder. Jasmine looked at the time. 1:08 p.m. Less than an hour remained. She finished helping the last guest in her queue, signed out of her workstation, straightened her uniform, and picked up her handbag. The taxi ride to headquarters felt strangely quiet. As the towering YMS building came into view, she finally understood why employees spoke of it with such fear. It wasn't just an office. It was where careers were built. Or ended. At exactly 2 o'clock, she stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor. Everything was silent. The polished corridor stretched ahead like a runway leading to judgment. Chairman Yoon's assistant was already waiting. Miss Bennett. This way. The massive wooden doors slowly opened. Sunlight poured into the enormous office. Yoon Min-seok stood with his back to her, gazing across the Seoul skyline. Without turning around, he spoke. Close the door. The soft click echoed through the room. Only then did he slowly turn to face the woman who had dared challenge him in front of an entire hotel. The office fell silent. Yoon Min-seok studied Jasmine Bennett without saying a word. She stood a few feet away, her hands clasped in front of her, refusing to let the silence intimidate her. The office was breathtakingly elegant, but its beauty did nothing to ease the tension pressing down on her shoulders. For nearly half a minute, neither of them spoke. It felt less like a meeting, and more like an examination. Min-seok finally walked away from the window and circled his desk with slow, measured steps. His movements were calm, almost effortless, yet every step carried authority. He stopped directly across from her. So, his voice was quiet. You're the employee who believes she knows how to run my hotel. Jasmine met his eyes. I believe people deserve to be treated with dignity. A faint smile almost appeared on his face. Almost. You mistake dignity for lowered standards. I don't. You do. He rested one hand on the edge of his desk. If a hotel like mine tolerates one careless mistake today, tomorrow there will be another. And another. Eventually, excellence disappears. Jasmine listened without interrupting. When he finished, she answered just as calmly. If fear is the only thing keeping people from making mistakes, she paused. Then they were never excellent to begin with. The room became still again. For the first time in years, someone had challenged Yoon Min-seok inside his own office. Most executives couldn't manage 30 seconds in front of him without apologizing. Jasmine Bennett had done the opposite. She had questioned his entire philosophy. Min-seok looked at her for several moments before reaching for the personnel file lying on his desk. He opened it slowly. 4 months. His eyes moved across the pages. Excellent attendance. No complaints from guests. The highest customer satisfaction rating among the new reception staff. He closed the file. I expected worse. Jasmine remained silent. I also expected an apology. I won't apologize for defending someone. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You seem very confident. No. I'm certain. Another long silence settled between them. Outside the office windows, Seoul carried on as though nothing extraordinary was happening. Inside, two completely different philosophies stood face to face. Min-seok finally spoke. Do you know why I left the hotel? Jasmine blinked. No. Because if I had remained there, he looked directly into her eyes. I might have made a decision based on anger. That answer surprised her. I don't make emotional decisions, Miss Bennett. I make permanent ones. He walked around the desk and pressed a button on the intercom. Mr. Lee. His assistant entered almost immediately. Yes, Chairman. Cancel human resources. Lee frowned. Sir? There will be no termination today. The assistant couldn't hide his surprise. Understood. After he left, silence returned. Jasmine had prepared herself to lose her job. She hadn't prepared herself for this. Min-seok folded his hands behind his back. Don't misunderstand. You haven't changed my opinion. I still believe you acted unprofessionally. You challenged your chairman in front of guests. You embarrassed this company. Jasmine took a slow breath. I challenged someone who embarrassed an employee. His expression remained unreadable. Interesting. He walked back toward the windows overlooking Seoul. Everyone in this company fears disappointing me. He turned slightly. You? He paused. Don't. No, I don't. Their eyes met once again. For reasons neither of them fully understood, neither looked away. Min-seok broke the silence first. I've decided your punishment. Jasmine straightened. You will remain employed. The words caught her completely off guard. But beginning tomorrow, he picked up another document from his desk. You are being transferred from the front reception desk. She frowned. To where? The chairman's executive services division. She stared at him in disbelief. She had never even heard of such a department. It reports directly to me. Her heartbeat quickened. You'll attend executive meetings when required. You'll coordinate VIP guest services. In every report you prepare, he placed the document on the desk. Will come across mine. Realization slowly spread across her face. This wasn't a promotion. It was a test. Min-seok wanted her close enough to watch every mistake she made. He intended to prove she wasn't as capable as she believed. He wanted her to fail. You think I'll quit? His answer came immediately. I think pressure reveals character. And if I succeed. For the first time since entering the office, something flickered behind his eyes. Not admiration, curiosity. Then perhaps, he said quietly, I'll have misjudged you. The words lingered between them. Jasmine nodded once. I'll report tomorrow. Without another word, she turned toward the door. Her hand had just reached the handle when Min-seok spoke again. Miss Bennett. She looked back. One more thing. His voice was calm. If you fail. His gaze never left hers. I won't give you a second chance. Jasmine held his stare for several long seconds. Then it's a good thing. A faint, confident smile crossed her face. I don't intend to fail. She opened the door and walked out. The executive floor was as silent as before. But the moment the doors closed behind her, Chairman Yoon's assistant looked up from his desk in disbelief. She was leaving. Not escorted by security. Not carrying a termination letter. She still had a job. Within an hour, the news spread through YMS Grand Hotel like wildfire. Jasmine Bennett hadn't been fired. She had been transferred to work directly under the most intimidating chairman in South Korea. No one celebrated. Because everyone inside the company knew one thing. Keeping your job was difficult. Working beside Yoon Min-seok every single day would be far harder. The news spread through YMS Group before sunrise. No official announcement had been made. None was necessary. By the time employees arrived for work, everyone already knew that Jasmine Bennett had somehow survived a private meeting with Chairman Yoon. That alone was unbelievable. What shocked them even more was where she had been assigned. The chairman's executive services division. People spoke about the transfer in hushed voices, as though saying it too loudly might somehow attract Yoon Min-seok's attention. Some believed it was a promotion. Most believed it was a countdown to her dismissal. Jasmine ignored the whispers as she stepped into the headquarters the following morning. She wore the same neatly pressed navy suit she had worn at the hotel, though today it somehow felt heavier. The executive floor welcomed her with the same intimidating silence she had experienced the day before. No unnecessary conversations. No laughter. Only the quiet rhythm of people determined not to make mistakes. Lee Hyun greeted her with a polite nod. Good morning, Miss Bennett. She returned the greeting. I've prepared your schedule. He handed her a digital tablet. It contained meetings, VIP arrivals, executive briefings, and inspection reports from sunrise until late evening. Jasmine skimmed the list. This all belongs to one day? It belongs to this morning. For the first time since accepting the transfer, Jasmine questioned whether Min-seok had assigned her work. or an impossible challenge. Across the hall, Yoon Min-seok was already reviewing reports. He never looked at the clock. His day began before most of the company had even left home. Every report was examined. Every financial figure verified. Every guest complaint personally reviewed. He expected excellence because he demanded it from himself first. When Lee informed him that Jasmine had arrived, he simply nodded. Begin. Nothing more. Jasmine barely had time to settle before the assignments started arriving. A delegation from Singapore required immediate accommodation changes. A famous actress requested complete privacy from photographers. An international business summit had moved its schedule forward by 3 hours. Every decision had consequences. Every mistake affected millions of won. The pace was relentless. Yet Jasmine refused to panic. She organized the requests one by one, delegated where appropriate, and personally confirmed every detail before forwarding them for approval. Lee quietly observed her from across the office. Most new employees became overwhelmed within an hour. Jasmine became quieter, more focused. Near noon, Min-seok stepped onto the executive floor. Conversations ended instantly. Employees stood as he passed. He acknowledged no one. His attention settled briefly on Jasmine. She was reviewing guest transportation schedules with remarkable concentration. Without warning, he placed another folder on her desk. Review it. She opened the file. It contained plans for an international charity gala involving diplomats, CEOs, and foreign investors. The event was only 5 days away. This is usually handled by senior management, she said. It is now handled by you. She looked up. If I have questions, you'll find the answers. Then he walked away. Several executives exchanged sympathetic glances. Everyone understood what had just happened. The chairman hadn't assigned Jasmine a task. He had dropped her into deep water to see if she could swim. The following days became a test of endurance. Min-seok corrected every misplaced detail. He noticed formatting errors no one else would see. He questioned every recommendation she submitted. If a report reached his desk at 9:01 instead of 9 o'clock, he noticed. If a guest itinerary contained one unnecessary sentence, he returned it. Nothing escaped him. At first, Jasmine wondered if he was deliberately targeting her. Then she noticed something surprising. He treated everyone the same. Senior executives received the same criticism. Department directors left meetings looking exhausted. Even Lee Hyun occasionally rewrote documents 3 times before they satisfied the chairman. Min-seok wasn't singling her out. He simply expected perfection from everyone. That realization didn't make him easier to work with, but it made him easier to understand. Late Thursday afternoon, the unexpected happened. A luxury shuttle carrying several international investors broke down on the expressway, less than an hour before an important signing ceremony. Panic spread through the operations team. Phone calls overlapped. Managers spoke over one another. No one seemed capable of making a decision. Jasmine stepped into the middle of the confusion. She contacted the hotel's fleet manager, rerouted executive vehicles, requested police traffic assistance through the event coordinator, adjusted the ceremony schedule by 15 minutes without inconveniencing the guests. Within minutes, every moving piece had fallen back into place. By the time the investors arrived, none of them realized anything had gone wrong. The crisis had disappeared before it became visible. Standing at the end of the corridor, Yoon Min-seok had watched the entire sequence unfold. He said nothing. He simply turned and walked back toward his office. But for the first time, he had not found a single mistake. That evening, Jasmine finally gathered her belongings. The headquarters had almost emptied. Her shoulders ached. Her eyes burned from hours spent reviewing reports. As she reached the elevator, Lee Hyun called after her. "Miss Bennett?" She turned. "The chairman wants tomorrow's gala presentation on his desk before 8. She checked the time. It was already after 7. "I'll finish it tonight." Lee hesitated. "You know..." She waited. "You're still here." She smiled faintly. So are you. A quiet laugh escaped him. It was probably the first genuine laugh heard on the executive floor in months. Inside his office, Min-seok stood beside the window overlooking Seoul. The city lights reflected across the glass. His attention drifted toward the presentation Jasmine had completed earlier that afternoon. He opened it again. He searched carefully, page after page, line after line. Eventually, he closed the file. Not because it was perfect, but because there was nothing left to correct. For reasons he couldn't explain, that realization unsettled him far more than any mistake ever had. Outside his office, Jasmine worked alone beneath the glow of a desk lamp, determined to finish the next assignment before sunrise. Neither of them realized it yet, but their battle had quietly begun to change. It was no longer about proving who was right. It was becoming something far more dangerous. Mutual respect. Monday morning arrived with dark clouds hanging over Seoul. Inside YMS Group headquarters, the atmosphere was even heavier. The annual Global Hospitality Investment Summit was only hours away. More than 300 executives, investors, and government officials from around the world were expected to attend. For YMS Grand Hotel Group, the event represented months of preparation. One mistake could destroy years of carefully built trust. Long before sunrise, every department was already working. Staff hurried through polished hallways carrying schedules, floral arrangements, and security reports. Jasmine Bennett stood in the middle of the controlled chaos, calmly reviewing the final guest list. Over the past few weeks, she had learned something few people ever discovered about Yoon Min-seok. His impossible standards were not reserved for others. He demanded even more from himself. He was always the first to arrive, always the last to leave. He never asked an employee to work harder than he did. It didn't excuse the fear he created, but it explained it. At exactly 8 o'clock, Min-seok entered the operations room. The conversations immediately stopped. He reviewed every department in less than 10 minutes, asking precise questions that revealed even the smallest weakness. No one escaped his attention. When his eyes reached Jasmine, he simply nodded. Proceed. It wasn't praise. Coming from him, it was something even rarer. Trust. An hour before the summit began, disaster struck. A power control system failed inside the convention wing. Within seconds, the massive digital presentation screens went black. Translation equipment shut down. Guest registration terminals stopped responding. Panic spread through the operations team. Department heads began talking over one another. Several executives immediately suggested postponing the opening ceremony. Min-seok remained perfectly still. His calm voice cut through the confusion. No one leaves this room until we have a solution. Silence returned. Ideas were offered. Rejected. Replaced by worse ones. Every minute increased the risk of public embarrassment. Then Jasmine stepped forward. She quickly studied the emergency reports before looking toward Min-seok. We don't need the entire convention wing. The room turned toward her. We only need one ballroom operational within 30 minutes. She began assigning responsibilities without waiting for permission. The West Ballroom still has independent backup power. Move registration there. Print temporary badges instead of using digital check-in. Use hotel interpreters until the translation system comes back online. Notify guests that the venue change is part of an upgraded experience. The room became quiet again. This time, not because of fear. Because everyone realized her plan could actually work. Several department heads looked toward the chairman. They wouldn't move without his approval. Min-seok didn't hesitate. Do it. The room exploded into motion. Within minutes, employees rushed through the building carrying signs, equipment, and furniture. Managers who had frozen moments earlier suddenly had direction. Jasmine moved from team to team, solving problems before they could become crises. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply refused to let the company fail. 35 minutes later, the first international guests entered the newly prepared ballroom. Soft music filled the room. Staff welcomed every visitor with practiced smiles. Fresh coffee was served. Not one guest suspected that the summit had nearly collapsed. The opening ceremony began only 7 minutes behind schedule. For an event of that size, it was nothing short of remarkable. Standing near the back of the ballroom, Min-seok watched everything unfold in silence. His gaze eventually settled on Jasmine as she quietly adjusted a seating arrangement before disappearing to help another department. She never looked toward him. She wasn't waiting for recognition. She had already moved on to the next responsibility. Late that afternoon, after the final investors had departed, exhausted employees slowly gathered inside the operations room. No one expected what happened next. Yoon Min-seok stepped to the front. His expression remained as composed as ever. The summit was successful. A few relieved smiles appeared. Then he continued. It succeeded because one employee remained calm while everyone else searched for someone to blame. The room became perfectly silent. He looked directly at Jasmine. "Miss Bennett?" She slowly stood. "For today's leadership," he paused. "You have my thanks." No one moved. No one spoke. Several managers exchanged stunned glances. They had worked under Chairman Yoon for years. Many had never heard him thank anyone publicly. Jasmine herself looked genuinely surprised. She simply bowed her head. "Thank you, Chairman." Nothing more, nothing less. Yet somehow, those 3 words carried more meaning than an entire conversation. The headquarters gradually emptied as evening settled over Seoul. Employees left with tired smiles, relieved that the most important event of the year had ended successfully. Jasmine remained behind to organize the final reports. When she finally switched off her computer, the executive floor had become almost completely silent. She picked up her bag and turned toward the elevators. A familiar voice stopped her. "Miss Bennett?" She turned. Yoon Min-seok stood a few steps away. In one hand was a paper cup of freshly brewed coffee. He placed it gently on her desk. "You'll need the energy." She looked at him, then at the coffee. "For tomorrow?" He nodded once. "Tomorrow will be worse." For the first time since they had met, Jasmine smiled without defiance. "I'll be ready." She picked up the cup. "Good night, Chairman." "Good night." She walked toward the elevator. Neither of them looked back, yet neither felt the need to. The silence between them no longer carried anger. It carried understanding. The elevator doors closed. Min-seok remained standing where he was. Lee Hyun quietly approached from the opposite corridor. "The summit exceeded expectations, Chairman." "It did." After a brief pause, Min-seok spoke again. "Schedule Miss Bennett for the Busan project." Lee looked up in surprise. "The 6-month redevelopment project?" "Yes. She's leading it." For a moment, Lee simply stared. Every executive inside YMS Group knew what the Busan project represented. Only the chairman's most trusted people were ever chosen to lead it. Lee nodded. "I'll inform her first thing tomorrow." Min-seok looked through the glass walls toward the city lights stretching across Seoul. His expression remained unreadable. But for the first time in many years, he wasn't thinking about the hotel's profits. He was thinking about the woman who had walked into his life, challenged everything he believed, and somehow made his company stronger because of it. Neither of them knew what the next 6 months would bring. But one thing had become certain. Their story was only just beginning.